Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Awaken and Love podcast. This is your host, Manon, and today I'm with the wonderful one of our Awaken and Love graduate and past member of Kick and Home, which is our peer support group, Isla. Welcome, Isla. Thank you so much for being there. I'm so glad that people get to hear you and get to hear your story.
Hi, Manon. Thank you for having me. I'm really honoured to be able to share my stories. It's nice to speak with you.
Yeah, so nice to have you too. So I'm going to quickly ask you, where are you living? How old are you? And yeah, how long have you been with your partner?
So I'm 24 years old, 25 in July, and I live in a really small, seaside town in Scotland. And I've lived here my whole life. I've been with my current partner for a year now. Um, but I've had ROCD in all my relationships, so
Oh, lovely. I love that.
yeah.
I don't love that, but you know what I mean? I'd love to hear more of that. Because what I'm hearing is like, yeah, you are with a partner right now, but RSD was there before. So would
Mhm.
you mind telling us a bit about like your story with RSD when it started and this journey?
So I'd say ROCD's been with me for about 6 years. So yeah, it's been with me basically my whole kind of teenagehood, adult life. I'd say I've been in three long-term relationships. So the relationship that I'm in just now is my third. It started in my first relationship. So I'd just turned 18 when I met my first boyfriend. And I remember that so clearly of it starting because I think it was there before there would always be this running joke that if I was ever dating a guy, it would only last maximum of 3 months because then I would completely, avoidant attachment style, like poof, like just push it away when it got serious and then that was it. And I would always think, like, how can my friends do this? And I can't. So even age like 14, 15, like that was there, but I didn't understand it to be ROCD until I was about 18. So it was always kind of lying a bit dormant. And then it kind of reared its head when I was 18. So yeah, I remember so clearly in my first relationship, we broke up like three times and it was me and I didn't understand what I was feeling and it was so scary and I remember thinking, do I have like some serious depression that I have like an inability to actually love someone? Like, is there something wrong with me? Which is obviously a common theme that comes up. I was like devastated that, I just couldn't bring myself to be present like with my first boyfriend. I suffered really badly with retroactive jealousy OCD as well. Didn't know what that was. I thought, I'm just so jealous. Like, why am I so insecure? And it was a lot. And, we were together for about a year and a half. Um, and I just obviously was in this cycle with no name
No name.
and no name. And I thought there was just something seriously wrong with me. I felt so ashamed to speak to my parents about it. And then when I would talk to people about it, it would be like, well, maybe you're just with the wrong person, or, you're young and this is your first relationship. And then I was like, oh my God. And I just remember so much anxiety. And yeah, that was really, really difficult. So yeah, that's when it started. And I literally remember how it felt.
Yeah, how was it?
And it
Because I think it's so helpful
urgent.
for people like to when they're living it to for people that are a bit further ahead in the journey to put words on it.
I'd say it's like a pit in the stomach that you mistake for your gut. And I remember the first time like I properly kind of melted down about it. And it was like constant breakup urges was like the main thing. And I remember it just being like my sort of consciousness felt warped. It felt as if, why am I so far away from like being present? It was like, yeah, it was like a pit in the stomach. It was like a burning sensation. And I know now that I think I felt so guilty and so shameful. Like I was literally 18, like, and I felt like I was going to ruin this person's life and I was going to break their heart over and over again. And, I really beat myself up about it. So I'd say it felt urgent. That I remember in that relationship, it feeling very, like, very urgent and very, like I was scared. And, it turned into more of like a depression
Yeah.
with the ROCD. And the retroactive jealousy OCD was, just a constant obsession and compulsive like behavior about my partner's past, girls he had either like slept with or been in a relationship before me. And it was all the time. It felt like a constant like movie playing in my like think about like the worst film you've ever been to and someone's like it got to the end of it and then rewinding it and then playing it again and playing it again. So all of that was kind of happening at once. And I remember that being like what I know now,
Yeah.
what my ROCD was, which is, it's sad. And I've worked through a lot of grief about my first relationship in loads of different ways because I just didn't know and he didn't know. And, it was hard, I'd say, for both of us. So just being a teenager and, experiencing your first relationship as it is hard. And
So hard.
um, that being a layer on top of it was really difficult. So yeah, that was kind of like my first
Yeah, that was
experience.
the first one. So it started really hard for you. And
Yeah.
say from what I'm hearing that it followed you through
Hmm.
your relationship. So it when you entered like a second relationship, like it was still there. ROCD came
Yeah.
up too, right? That ROCD followed you. And I'm curious, like, so when did you is it during that relationship that you found out about ROCD? Because I'm hearing that during the first relationship you had no idea.
No idea.
Yeah, so
Nothing.
that's the hardest. And so when, I mean, it's also hard when you start to realize that you have OCD. It's another journey, but at least you have a word and you know that you're not alone. So I'm curious, like, is that during that second relationship that you found out? How did you find out about OCD and did it help in any way?
So my second relationship, 2.5 years, I met that person when there was what I realize now was definitely I'm just recently diagnosed with ADHD and I'm currently exploring an autism
Right.
diagnosis. So what I know now is when I met um, my last boyfriend, I was in a very vulnerable place and I was in like a really bad sort of burnout period. It was during lockdown, like quarantine with COVID. So it was just a lot. And I remember when we got together, the first, I'd say maybe like 3 months was the honeymoon period. And I was like, whatever happened in that first relationship obviously doesn't exist now. So, this is fine. This is working. I'm cured, whatever that was. Don't know her. Like, that was it. And then I found after, I think it was about 3 months, um, it was the exact same pattern
Mm.
started creeping in again. And again, I thought it was depression. I thought, that like I'm just mentally ill. Like that this is, I can't function in a relationship because I'm struggling so much with myself. And, it would be easier to just stay on my own, push everyone away. I would go very kind of that black and white. I remember just constantly breaking down to my partner to begin with and being like, I don't know what's happening. I can't feel anything. I can't feel anything. I would look at him and it would be like a blank slate. And I know now it was, I've done a lot of work with my nervous system and somatic work and inner child work. And I know now that that was obviously, my nervous system and a lot of protectors coming up to distance myself from the internal discomfort that I was feeling, which was the ROCD and my ADHD. There was a lot of things at once.
Yeah.
So I remember thinking, how do I know I love him? What even is love? What does love feel like? It's not a tangible thing. So, if it's not certain in front of me, I don't know. Am I attractive am I attracted to him? The retroactive jealousy came up, so it was almost flipped on its head that am I attractive enough for him? Looking at his past relationships and obsessing over, like really obsessing over them, common themes that came up in that relationship. It was like everything at once just came. So I really struggled with sexual orientation, OCD, which was like a curveball that was like boof. And I was like, yeah, that was a theme that came up. Cheating, OCD. I thought, if I seen someone else that was attractive, if I had any type of thought of feeling attracted to someone else or fantasizing over someone else, I really shamed myself about that. That to me equaled that I was going to cheat and that I've never cheated on anyone in my life, but they thoughts equaled that to me at that time. It was just a lot. It was interesting you said earlier, I can't remember a lot because it just felt so like
But
another part of me.
yeah, totally. And that, I mean, that's such a great sign of the distance that is right now between you and what you were experiencing before. That's such a sign of healing and it's beautiful. And at the same time, I really appreciate you like bringing up all those details because it's really helpful for others. I think what I'm hearing from what you're sharing a lot is, and let me know if that resonates with you, is this idea of hyper responsibility too. Or like if you cheat or if you don't love him or if you're gonna ruin his life, you're gonna make him suffer. Like is this a theme that has been like very heavy for you along all those years?
Yes, I think, and I don't know if this is linked to being neurodivergent. I definitely have. It's interesting because when um, I joined Awaken into Love, everyone was talking about attachment wounding and attachment kind of trauma with parents. And I thought, oh, no, 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 like my parents are perfect. Like I'm an only child, everything's perfect. And I love my mum and dad so much, and they are great parents. But there was definitely, as I did the work, um, seeing a parent suffer with mental health and possibly being neurodivergent as well, but going through their whole life not knowing that. So, it would present itself as mental health. I think seeing that as a child, also not knowing that I had ADHD and I think I am autistic, not knowing that for 20 odd years, not feeling seen by my parents, not feeling seen by anyone really. That was a big load on
Yeah.
my back. It was always what is wrong with me. And it came from the root of being neurodivergent. And then when ROCD came up, it was almost sort of put back into me and installed back into me what is wrong with me. And I think the hyper responsibility comes from I can't show this to anyone because in case I'm too much for them and um seeing a parent obviously struggle too, that was I need to fix my parent, I need to fix their marriage. I'd say I'm quite a big empath, so I feel other people a lot. And I think it's just been the past year or so that I've learned a lot about boundaries, having that awareness that, I'm only responsible for my internal experiences and how I react to them and how I respond to them. And I think learning that we're all just trying to get through
Absolutely.
life and we all have our own sort of things. I used to really take that literally as if it was, my responsibility to make sure that someone else is happy and be their happiness as well, which that kind of homeless giveaway syndrome
I was gonna
definitely,
yeah.
yeah, definitely was there.
There are a lot with our city, and I love that you touched upon the idea of like how trauma or like an experience that affect how you will behave later can be more subtle than we think. That can be just like even by people around us that are very like fine, they want the best for us, but they're just not equipped to see maybe the nuances that makes us who we are. And just like not being seen for who we are can create that need to be perfect for others, this need to think that everything depends on you, that everything is like upon your shoulders. And that I love that you touched on that because a lot of people, as you like, are coming to Awaken like, no, my family's perfect, my parents perfect, like I don't have any attachment issue, everything's fine. But that can be way more subtle than that. And I think that's super interesting. Also, this entwinement of OCD, ROCD, and neurodivergence that I feel can add a layer. I don't know if you'd like to go a little bit into that because that's a
Yeah.
very huge interest of mine too, of course, because
Hmm.
I am neurodivergent too, and I've been diagnosed with ADHD and OCD, and I'd love to hear your experience of combining both because I think it's not something a lot talked about.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, it was like profound when I got my diagnosis that then I was looking at my ROCD and I was like, okay, right. So that there is a definite, I'm not a medical professional, but there's, to me personally, there's a link between it. I think being neurodivergent can heighten the ROCD experience for me. I think look at the ADHD to start with. I've got diagnosed with combined ADHD, so hyperactive and inattentive. So there's like a lot happening at once.
Yeah.
Multiple furrows. My hyperactivity is internal. My thoughts are on like times two speed most of the time. My brain's very busy as it is. There's a lot of different kind of trains of thought happening at once, and there's like a song in the background, and it could be really hard. There's just a lot. Then when you bring ROCD into that, with OCD, you can find that you have a lot of thinking. That's the kind of common thing. Rumination. And then if when you have ADHD, it's like rumination on steroids. Like that's what it feels like. So it's like fast forward and it's like I mean when you've got ADHD, your nervous system naturally sits and with autism as well, your nervous system naturally sits slightly like dysregulated a lot of the time.
Yeah.
When ROCD comes up, that obviously dysregulates your nervous system in a different way and even more.
Yeah.
So there's kind of two components then happening at once. And I found that really difficult, like in my journey to understand what was what
Yeah.
and how to navigate that as well. Am I burning out because of the ROCD? Am I burning out because of the ADHD? Is it both? Probably most of the time it would be.
Yeah,
Um,
which I'm sure can become an obsession in itself. Like the OC, we become to have an obsession around, is it an obsession? Like, you know what I mean? It's this meta OCD where you end up like obsessing, wanting to make sure 100% is it ADHD or is it OCD, which
yeah.
add to the whole like pot of like it's a little bit of worth, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I was the exact same. I think as well, people, and I know that you're the same, Manon, but people with ADHD, we feel deeply, and we were probably deemed as like sensitive growing up, highly sensitive person. I think that sort of, like rejection, sensitivity, dysphoria, going back to the feeling hyper responsible for other people, I think a lot of that stemmed from how do I shrink myself down to then feel like I fit in. It was like constantly being on alert to be able to try and fit into those around you. I felt like that part then linked a lot to my ROCD, especially with like the autistic traits, that very black and white thinking. I'd say the biggest link between the two for me was going so long without being diagnosed,
Yeah.
then created that trauma in itself.
Yeah, that's a trauma, totally.
Yeah, so that I think created a very dismissive, like avoidant attachment style in me because it was like, no, 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 you can't get too close because, I'm different. There's something wrong with me. You won't like it. You're going to see me for who I am. And then that was when I would push. So I noticed that a big theme with my ROCD was the breakup urges and that feeling, that need for almost being hyper independent and not needing anyone. Looking at my partner like, I just want to be alone. I want left alone. I want to isolate myself and I can't cope with being in a relationship. And that was, the biggest kind of underlying theme that ran along my ROCD journey was that hyper independent part and that I can't be myself being in a partnership because I have to hide. And, I can't be myself being in a partnership because I need a lot of alone time. And what if they don't understand that?
Yeah.
I need to decompress and recharge a lot. What if they don't understand that? How am I meant to show myself fully in my wholeness to a person when I struggle to even have the capacity to sit with myself most of the time?
Totally. And
So,
even sometimes like know yourself, I'm supposing. Like with this, when we like found out that we had ADHD or like neurodivergence for such a long time and haven't been diagnosed, I suppose at least that's how I experienced it, that it's almost like, but who am I? Like, because I've been masking for so long, I've been living like literally like a persona without even knowing that I was crafting a persona in the first place. Like, there is all this because to be in a relationship, you also have in some way to talk at Awaken a lot about knowing your values, knowing this, but you also have to know who you are. So I guess with this double like diagnosis, you start like having all those stuff also like fighting each other a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, my first relationship, I definitely, when I look back now, I morphed into someone that I thought he would like. I don't really remember it being him making me feel like I had to do that, but I just naturally was so used to how do I fit in? How do I do this? How do I do that? How do I get someone to like me? How do I come across normal?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was the same in my second relationship. I found that I morphed myself to people please a lot, and I kind of began to like hardwire myself to constantly tell myself like it's not okay to express, it's not okay to do, be you, it's not okay to be fully you and your kind of whole expression. It's not been until this relationship that I'm in now that I've really been able to lean into that fully and be a separate identity to my relationship and it still,
Yeah.
work.
Yeah, that's a beautiful like topic. I would love to hear before we go into like how you feel now, because I'm hearing that in your current relationship, you've been able to dive more into you, like try to lean into like being you aside from your partner. But I remember you saying that you found out about ROCD during your second relationship. I'm wondering how you found out about it, because sometimes for people that quite a journey of like compulsively looking into Google and ending up on a website or something. How that's been helpful for you to have like not a diagnosis because we don't do diagnosis at Awaken, but at least to have some answers regarding what you were experiencing for so long and how that changed a little bit like the your path and your journey, if it did.
Yeah. I remember it was in my second relationship. I actually remember it really, really vividly. I was lying in my bed and I was in the pit of ROCD, like it was really there. And I remember Googling, actually, no, it was on YouTube. So I remember literally typing into the search bar on YouTube, obsessively wanting to, I can't remember if it was like obsessively not knowing if I love my partner or love my boyfriend or obsessively wanting to break up with boyfriend. It was something like that. It was one
Yeah.
of the two. And I remember it coming up. I can't remember what the girl's name was. She only made like two videos, and then didn't make anything else ever again. But I remember she made one called My ROCD Story, and I was like, hmm. And I knew as a child I definitely had OCD tendencies, like, and it was always around compulsively doing things so my mum and dad wouldn't get hurt or they wouldn't die or yeah, it
Magical
was
thinking, like rituals, this kind of things.
or
Yeah.
the cat or the dog. Like, it was always about things that I cared about. So I was like, okay. So I remember watching this video and I can't remember exactly, what her story was, but I remember listening to it and then just tears like
Sure.
just pouring out of my eyes. And I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
How is like literally she is like in my brain right now and explaining what my experience currently is. Um, and she was married now and um managed to get through that really hard period of it, but just hearing someone say these things out loud, because in my immediate circle no one else was experiencing what I was experiencing. Just hearing that for the first time, I remember like after I finished watching the video I was just crying. Like it was just such a relief to be like there's literally a word to 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 describe this. Like it's not because I'm like broken or like can't love anyone. It's not because
Yeah.
of that. And I remember just copy and pasting it and sending it to my partner at the time and being like, please watch this. um, and he watched it and he was like, oh my God, like this is, what you're experiencing. And then it was then that then I found Kiyomi's videos, and then it was like, obviously think about it now, it was compulsive, but I remember just like watching every single one and being like, this is me, this is me, this is me, this is me. Yeah, that's kind of started the journey. But it was that first video. I wish I could remember her name. But it was that first video
Yeah. When
started.
we found out about like that we're not, I think what we've heard over and over with the members is like the first moment where you found out that it actually exists, that as you were saying, it has the words and that you're not alone. I think that's what our tagline at Awaken Love is, you're not alone, because that's really the core of it. I mean, that extends to a lot of mental health struggles, knowing that you're not alone, experiencing something that feels so shameful, so like hard internally that can't really be seen outwardly. But yeah, this element of like community, I how was it for you? Because I know you went through the ROCD course at Awaken into Love, and then you decided to join our peer support group that was called Kick back then. And I'm
Mhm.
wondering how community has been a part of your healing journey, because I know that some people find it very intimidating at first, because this idea, because it's so shameful being in group and sharing the thought, and even like finding out that maybe you have a problem or you really need to break up with your partner, like all of this coming up. So I would love to hear about your experience of community healing and if it's been something that you deem important in your journey.
Yeah, for me it has been really, really important because, like I said, like I live in a small town. There will be people that live in my area that experience the same things as me, and it could even be ROCD. But in my immediate circle, nobody really knew what I was experiencing. So I found that then finding a community outside of that was just, it was like empowering. And I remember coming on to, well, I did the course first.
Yeah.
I remember even just going through that and getting that kind of foundation, sort of knowledge and awareness. I remember just going through every part of it, and I've still got my journal. Like I literally just like made it so colourful, like on the page, and wrote everything down in a way that would, you know, sit in my head. I remember having that as like a good foundation. Even, I mean, Kiyomi is amazing. So even the way that she talks and how knowledgeable she is, and how much wisdom she has, I think even just hearing someone was like a little beacon of like light to start with.
Yeah.
And then when I joined Kick, I remember my first session and I was so nervous. I was sitting on the couch and I was like, oh my God. I don't think I spoke. I can't remember really even saying anything, but I remember just soaking everything in and just hearing other people. And I teared up like 5 times on the call. Um, and
Oh,
then after the call, I remember just crying again and being like, how amazing is it that these people are from so many different countries, so many different cultures, different backgrounds, and we were all sharing something like together. There was no shame in any, and I realized that very quickly. Like obviously in my first session, I was like, "Ooh," like a little mouse, but I remember slowly feeling like I could add things. Because I realized how open the group was and all the very shameful thoughts I had, people were saying them out loud, and I was like, oh, that's okay. you know?
yes.
Just hearing then Kiyomi respond to that in a way that made me feel like I was like a human being again. I was like, okay,
Wow.
that was amazing. And I still remember the people that were in that first kit group, and I have some of them on social media. And
Yeah.
it's just so nice, like knowing that we started that together. And then some of them are married, some of them have kids, some of them have, progressed on other things. And it's like, it's just amazing to see these people, be able to get through it and live with the ROCD. It's just, it was amazing. And I think community, especially for any mental health, communities massive. Just know, because we have got this tendency, I think the world's kind of opened up in the sense of social media, but also sometimes I think community feels really small in real life.
Yeah.
So I think having that online, and it could be anyone can come in from any part of the world and we're sharing something together. Like it was a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And just for it to be so, I didn't have to mask anything. I didn't have to be conscious of what I was saying,
Yeah.
or obviously you have to be mindful, but I mean to the point that I didn't feel shameful for anything that was being discussed or what I was adding into, and it just felt like a really safe like place, safe community, safe space. Yeah, yeah. It was just, I mean, I loved Kick, and that was, I think, the catalyst. I think obviously doing the course was like that foundation bit, but
Yeah.
joining Kick was like the catalyst, I'd say, into like my healing journey.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah,
yeah.
that's what a lot of members say, like you, that you start with the course that gives you the foundation, but also like being in the peer support group is like a way also to apply all that. Because with OCD, we can be a lot in our head and the cognitive part of things. So being in kick and like being vulnerable and sharing and being also like encouraged by other members to do the work and to be seen and celebrated in doing the work is also like I feel like such an important part of healing that can be sometimes it's hard to do the work on your own, really, and to not have
Mhm.
like a place you go back to and you're like, oh, how was your week? What did you struggle with? Like, do you guys have a tip when you struggle on that? I feel alone, it's so hard with, especially when you have like this mind, like literally like hyperactive mind constantly. And I feel also a lot of self-judgment, I guess. So I'm so we will it was such a delight to have you in class and also to see you bloom and like share because I feel pretty quickly you shared wisdom and we could see that it brought like some it brings so much relief that kind of
Mhm.
unleash some finally I can speak out finally I can be myself, right? And this group
Yeah.
is a place where we see people reveal this themselves this way.
And it was nice as well, like even besides ROCD, connecting with people that were actually just like-minded in general, and
Yeah.
we shared, I'd say, quite a lot of things in common outside of the ROCD, which was really nice as well. I think slowly, like being able to then add in to the group and share little like bits of wisdom, that also felt like it was strengthening a part
Yeah,
of my brain, because
absolutely.
you were using what you were learning and the tools, and you're integrating that, but then being able to then integrate it yourself and then possibly help someone else then integrate that, like that was just strengthening that
Absolutely.
part of my brain even more. It felt really kind of good in the end that I was hearing people and being like, I don't know what they're talking about, okay, so this is what I did, and it just, yeah, it was just great. Yeah, I did really enjoy Kick. So
Being part of Kick and also doing your inner work, you spoke about somatic healing, about inner child, a lot of stuff that you've been doing really bravely. How did you notice that you were starting to heal? And I think larger than that, and that's a big question, it's like, what did you kind of learn about healing through this journey? Because I don't know, like you'll tell me, but sometimes the vision that we have of healing change along the way.
for me to start with, when I started to have little glimmers of, this could get a bit better, or, I'm starting to integrate the work, I then got very ahead of myself and went, okay, but I can make this go away one day. And, I'm going to be healed and I'm going to be cured. And, it was very, I kind of ran away with myself with it. And then I started to, when I came to Kick most weeks, I kind of learning the art of what integration actually is and what healing actually is. And it's going to be slower. And that's actually the beauty of it, I would say. You are in that kind of ebb and flow that you're going to feel like you're almost feeling the benefits of the work that you did, but then it might come back again, and you might take 2 steps back to then get 3 steps forward, and it's just this kind of back and forward. And I think I didn't become so conscious of that until I was in like my current relationship, and I've almost then felt the benefits of all this work that I did. And especially, I think it kind of came kind of 3 stages with my healing journey,
Yeah.
and I still am. It doesn't mean, yeah, definitely right now it's not like my OCDs went away. It's just I've learned to kind of move with it now. That's probably the best way to describe it. It's at a distance from me now, I would say. But it's still, it's not something that you don't need to cure yourself. It's not like you are broken to be cured. It's more. It opened up a lot because I realised through doing inner child work, I think learning about the psychology behind ROCD and OCD in general was like the foundation. Then coming into kick, we would do inner child practices, somatic practices. I'd say for me personally, the inner child stuff came first because I think that needed to be tended to. And I think a lot of that came from growing up and not knowing that I was neurodivergent, and then obviously as a young adult, then experiencing ROCD. So I think that inner child piece for me was, I'd never done that before. So I remember doing the practices and just being like, oh my God, like there was just so much inside of me that needed like love, like it
Yeah.
needed just compassion and needed
Right.
tended to. I realized very quickly that a lot of the ways that my thoughts would present themselves was always I would be so hard on myself about everything, like bullying myself,
Yeah,
literally. Like, and
literally.
that's what OCD can feel like it is. It's like a non-bully, like in your brain based and your body somatically too. So yeah, I'd say the inner child work felt like, yeah, I tended to that, and I still am to this day. I still,
Yeah.
I carry that part of me like wherever I go now. Like,
I
and
think it's an ongoing journey to tend to that inner self, right?
I think your whole life there'll
Yeah.
be parts, and then with the somatic work, I then started to make that link between, okay, so this isn't just in my mind,
Mhm.
which you kind of automatically, we are taught, I think, Western medicine, Western healthcare,
Absolutely.
mental health care, it's so there's a disconnect from the mind and the body. You're treating the mind without looking at the body, or treating the body without look. It's just this disconnect. So I think I didn't even know what somatic work was until I joined Kick. I'd never heard of it before. So I think then learning about that, I started to realize there's a lot in here
Yeah.
happening, and my nervous system was so dysregulated. And it wasn't until we started doing the nervous system practices that then I was like, well, how's that then just made my thoughts kind of quieten down, not go away obviously, but quieten down. And I had more room when I started doing the somatic healing to then integrate the kind of psychology. It was like working in kind of
Yeah,
tandem with each other.
absolutely.
Um,
It's really a dance.
yeah.
I like to call it dance because you get away a little bit from the foundation to go to another practices and then you come a bit closer and it's really not something that you're done forever. Like this is behind me. It's like something you keep like weaving together in a sense.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I think for me with somatic healing, because after Kick, I then went and worked with Erin at the hum coaching. And
Yeah,
I think
beautiful.
I was our first client, which was really
Oh,
like an
lovely.
honor. Yeah.
Oh,
So we worked together for tending to that part as well. And I realized that, especially through somatic work, and I think this is, if I could share anything with anyone about, ROCD, it would be that once you start not disconnecting the thoughts, but once you start obviously looking at the thoughts from a distance and just observing them, with the somatic work, I started to learn a lot about how grief showed up for me, and
mm,
a lot about how anger showed up for me, and despair, sadness, but then also how joy and pleasure and all these things showed up for me as well. So I had never made that connection that these thoughts are coming up because there's something underneath it, you
yeah.
know. And when I learned that, I was like, wow,
Mind
like
blown.
that, mind blown. And for me, I think a lot that was coming up constantly was grief that I had not processed or tended to like for 20 odd years. So yeah, the somatic healing and the inner child healing really soothed that part. I think even besides ROCD, like I just started to become, you say at Awakening to Love, you come back into your wholeness, like
Yeah.
you start recognize yourself as like a multifaceted like person again. You're not so honed in on being perfect and having the right thoughts, and you start it's like expansive, because you start then slowly just kind of feel like you're going like this and you've got
Yeah.
so much more space. Like that's the only way, like that's how I visualize it. I went from like here to then coming out and there's room and like I'm a human being with all these things that could like exist at once now. So
Beautiful. And I think that that connect perfectly with what I'd like to ask you to go a bit more into, if you feel like it's to like along that healing journey. I'm hearing already a lot of wisdom, but what would be your main like takeaway, like the biggest pieces of wisdom you gathered along the way? I'm hearing like this element of wholeness because I think you're such a wise person effortlessly. I've felt it from the very beginning of seeing you in class. But I'm guessing that with this journey of ROCD and healing, what did you realize? How did it help you? Did it change you personally, but also in relationship with others?
it changed my life doing the ROCD work, like my life, like holistically, like everything. You know, obviously with the ROCD predominantly, but then like outside of that, like tended to parts of myself that had never even been looked at, you know, and maybe wouldn't have ever been looked at if I hadn't had ROCD. So I'm actually like grateful of
Wow.
the like so grateful of the journey because now I could see even in my current relationship now the way that like I show up is, you know, I still have my days. The ROCD comes up, like, you know, that's I'm not sugarcoating that like that. It's definitely there. But the way that I show up towards it is more tender now. Like I'm not so harsh and I'm not so like, what is wrong with you? Like why is this happening? Are these thoughts real? What do I do with them? I need to put them somewhere. They need to go away. Like, me and my partner, my current partner, have a relationship that's based on a lot of humour.
Hmm.
Maybe too much sometimes, I don't know. But for us, you know, that's just how we came together was we bonded over, we had the same sense of humour. So I think having that as a strength like within our relationship because now I was, you know, my past relationship, there wasn't a lot of humour towards my OCD there. It was intense and I was, you know, I felt a lot of shame coming from myself and from the other person. So I think in this partnership now, tending to the ROCD with a little bit of humour and play sometimes, like that's really, really helped.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, we just laugh a bit. Like even now, which I do catch myself, I will still, you know, one of my biggest compulsions would be confessing my thoughts. So I still sometimes trip myself up and I will do that. And that's just, you know, a part of it and being human. But now we laugh it off, you know, and it's easier with that. I'd say my biggest takeaway is it makes me sad because I look at a lot of people that could do with feeling this and could do with, you know, doing the work that is associated with ROCD, but it's work that's I think essential for majority of us anyway, like somatic work and inner child work, attachment healing and all these different things. Like I said, like the biggest takeaway is feeling like I'm human and actually feeling the extent of that now and being okay with that. Like that's my biggest takeaway is I don't feel so guilty anymore about just showing up in the world how I show up. You know, like I think as a culture, we get so honed in on having to feel a certain way all the time and having to not feel these emotions but feel these emotions and but not feel them in that type of way because that's too much and then that you know it's so hard to navigate that. I'm like, what do you actually want from me?
Yeah,
Like,
so much
you know,
expectations and contradictory ones most of the time, right?
yeah, I think we're made to feel like we should be on our own. You know, you know, community and you know, whether it's especially in like heterosexual relationships, politics makes us feel like we're so far away from each other. Men don't like women, women don't like men, and there's everything in between that as well. And it's like it just feels like we're in this kind of turmoil just now that there's no sense of connection. And if there is connection, then it has to be perfect and it has to look a certain way. And it's like, well, how are you meant to win with that? You know, like I think doing the ROCD work, it's let me have like a bird's eye view of all these kind of things that are happening. And I can look at it now and be like, I could create something like with my partner that is never going to be perfect, but it's ours, you know what I mean? And it doesn't need to look like the next person. We're not always going to like each other. We're not always going to be attracted to each other. And now I could actually sit with that. I used to never be able to sit with that.
Yeah.
Like if anything came up that was against my partner or against the relationship or I thought was a bad reflection of myself, I couldn't even sit with it. It was unbearable. Whereas now I'm like, oh, I don't really feel attracted to him today. Like, and I could, I could sit with it now, and I could be like, I know that's okay. There'll be a little glimmer down the road that you'll feel attracted to him again, and that's fine. Like, you don't need to sit and wait for that to happen again. Like, it'll come and it'll go. And the way for me is coming back into like just accepting myself as like a full human with all these experiences and allowing things to exist at once because I think I was so caught up on with my ROCD of well if I'm feeling that then that can't exist
Yeah.
with that.
It's either or,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the yeah. Actually, I spoke about that right today. It's like this coexistence of different feelings, a different state of mind, of different like situations. Like that's really something that are so far away, yeah, from how we consider relationship, how we consider the world in general. It's either or. It's this very
Yeah.
cancel culture. Either you love, either you hate, either
Yeah.
you're fully attracted, either you're not. When actually being human is, as you were beautifully saying, like living in that nuance too, being in those
Mhm.
like little combinations in between of those extremes that are not really matching any definition of being human at all.
Yeah, totally. I think it's like we live in a kind of space now that things are feeling disposable and if it's not working for a little bit, not working for a little bit, then get rid, let's look at something else or let's and if you do that, and that's why I'm so grateful I found this community because it makes me upset that I could have been stuck in that sort of cycle my whole life of getting into partnership and then feeling like it wasn't right.
Yeah.
I'm putting my hands up like this, but feeling like it wasn't right and then disposing of it and then finding someone else and then doing, repeating these patterns. And I think whether it's ROCD or attachment wounding, I think in our society today, there's a lot of people that are surviving in that pattern and, it's sad. Like it's sad.
Like what I'm hearing from what you're saying, that's something I support so much, is like it's beyond than ROCD. It's really a
Yeah.
work that like lead you to be more yourself, but when you're more yourself, you are more equipped to be also to extend that compassion to others, I feel, and the ripple effect is really that it creates
Oh
like
yeah.
in a world that's really different from the one we're living in. And thank you for that. We really walked this path like backwards. It's like going back when you started, when you were this Isla, or 18 years old, starting with ROCD without even knowing that ROCD existed, and now being this beautiful, wise, like person that's sharing so much wisdom with
Thank
us.
you.
If you got the chance to, as yourself right now, to talk to your younger self, younger Isla that's just starting this thing that we call relationship, and that's also like starting to experience ROCD, OCD, and this big pain and depression that you expressed, what would you tell her?
I think I would tell her that there's a long kind of journey ahead and it's going to feel terrifying to start with. But once you come out somewhat, not the end of it, but like once you come to a place of healing, I would basically just say to her that like, you will be okay. Like
Yeah.
you're gonna survive like through this and it's in the end going to make you so much more of an equipped person and so much more of a loving person and so much more of yet like a multifaceted person like you're not two-dimensional as much as like I think I maybe tried to be when I was younger like I wasn't so I think it's just I would give her a hug I would give
Oh,
her a
yeah.
massive hug and say like like I feel very protective over that part of myself now and I'm like I just didn't know I didn't know and I was scared I've done like a lot of work on the grief of that age and what that felt like and even my first boyfriend as well, feeling grief for him because that would have been difficult
Yeah.
for him to come through with me as well. So, and I made myself feel really guilty about that for a while, but now I definitely tend to that age of myself with a lot of love. And it can make me feel really, really emotional, just the difference of,
Yeah.
6 years and how much I've came through not thinking that I was ever going to come through it as well. And I was going to be, stuck in the ROCD and stuck in that, kind of mental state as well. Yeah, and it's interesting because I actually was speaking to one of my friends about this when I was in the depths of like ROCD, because that was the focal point of my whole being was the OCD. And now that my nervous system feels more regulated, and I would tell my younger self this, I can actually like acknowledge what season it is outside, like the weather. I remember for like 3, 4 years, I didn't even take in that it went from summer to winter or it went from like autumn to winter because I was so detached from being present with anything. And I've noticed now that my nervous system's more like regulated, that I can actually like look outside and recognize that that there's actually something going on. Like time hasn't just like stood still, which I know is like kind of like a crazy thing to speak about, but that was definitely a big indicator that something had started to kind of change within me. And
I love that. I love this
yeah,
imagery of the season and the cycle because when you're stuck with OCD and RCD and stuck in the pain, it's like nothing else exists. And that's a very good,
yeah,
like, that shows that you are disconnected from yourself first and foremost, but from the world around you too.
yeah.
And I love that as a sign of healing to start like noticing the seasons. Very beautiful.
Mm. I think I would just say to my younger self, like, you're going to be able to do it and
Yeah.
you're going to be able to be in a partnership. It's going to take time, but you're going to be able to be in a partnership and not feel like your whole existence and your whole consciousness is about trying to stay in the partnership. You're able to then now exist in a beautiful partnership, but I'm be able to exist like within myself, separate from that too,
That's
which I
beautiful.
never thought I'd be able to do. It was that wholeness, giveaway sort
Yeah,
of
like
syndrome.
so. Yeah, just before we close, I'd love to hear a bit more about this wellness giver syndrome because you touched upon that at the beginning, how you noticed that now, in which way are you able to exist more by yourself now while being in a partnership? Because I think, yeah, you're
Mm,
saying this, there is this very black and white idea with ROC that's either or, like either you can grow, evolve, expand on yourself, or you are like tied to a partnership and you can exist as yourself. So how has it morphed for you through this healing journey?
Start of my ROCD journey, like when I was 18, I think wholeness giveaway syndrome was very much there. Like I almost, I morphed into that person
Yeah.
and I felt wholly responsible for my relationship. It was almost as if I was in the driver's seat of the whole relationship. It wasn't a partnership, it was just Isla. And if Isla wasn't okay and if Isla, wasn't coping with things, then that meant everything was doomed and everything was wrong. And, it was difficult. So I think going from that to then my last relationship felt that wholeness giveaway syndrome was there, I'd say in a different way. I did feel very responsible for that person's
Yeah.
well-being along with how they showed up in a relationship, how I showed up in a relationship. I think it was like this constant within myself turmoil of feeling like I can either only exist on my own or exist with a partner,
Yeah.
but I am one with them.
One with them. Yeah. Not being able to have any form of independence of like autonomy and some stuff. And yeah, I'm curious, like if there's stuff, for example, that when you're like deep in this wholeness giveaway syndrome, like you were not like allowing yourself to do, which would be stuff that you were not like, and that now you allow yourself to be or to do.
For me, it was like simple things. So I found with my ADHD, I'm like a light switch sometimes. So if I'm like example, I've started the gym again. So when I find something that makes me feel good, I could kind of hyperfixate on it and it becomes my whole existence. So I found
Right.
that with with ROCD that was really scary to me because I then kind of honed into something, whether it was like a new interest or a form of self-care or something that was separate from my partnership, I would really fixate on it and I would really put all my energy into that. And I think that's a beautiful thing about ADHD as
Also.
well. But then I would feel so guilty because then I would have, in a day, say, I would be so fixated on something and get so much enjoyment out of it, but then I'd be like, I've not really thought about my partner today. And
Right.
then I'd be like, oh my God, I'm the worst, like, I'm literally the worst girlfriend. Like, that must mean X, Y, fill in the blank. That must
Yep.
mean that, I don't love him. I don't want his company. Like, that must mean I'm like, my, I'm starting to not be in alignment with them. I'm going to heal and progress further outside of them and I'm
Yeah,
going to lose them. And
the outgrowing
oh,
aspect.
yeah,
Yeah,
that was a big theme. So then I would again bring myself back down and make myself feel guilty for then, yeah, being a person outside of the partnership,
absolutely.
or needing that alone time where, I'm having to deliberately distance myself from the relationship to preserve my own energy as well. I used to feel so guilty about needing alone time. So I think between, yeah, I needing alone time and then doing things and, you know, feeling, kind of hyper fixated on them. Now I see that as a beautiful thing with my ADHD and then with the ROCD that I'm so like grateful to have the ability to be able to put all my energy into something
Yeah.
and be able to give it my all. Even if it's for a short period of time and it might move on
Yeah.
to something else. But I think now in my partnership, my partner's also very good at not taking that personally either, and that me being able to do these things is to preserve myself and to regulate myself, and it actually having a separate identity outside of the relationship actually makes the relationship more fulfilling because he's got his things, I've got mine, and then we come together and we're still two people, separate people that could come together. It's like I always see now, I used to think a relationship was like my whole embodiment and like that if I had a boyfriend then that was my whole world and that was I think a lot of that came from like the media and Hollywood and everything. So I think again that black and white thinking, I thought when I have a boyfriend that is my life and I can't get out of that, like I deemed it as quite a trapped sort of thing,
Yeah.
whereas now it's expanded out more of what a beautiful thing it is if you've got two good, not perfect, but good people coming together and it's like a blank canvas. You can kind of create what you want on it. And I never seen relationships like that. I always seen it as like a burden, like being in a partnership was like a burden and it was too much for me. Whereas now it's like a bonus. It's like
Love
I'm
it.
existing as me and I'm fulfilling, I'm filling my own cup up and I have my own life and he has his and I want what's best for him. And there'll be times where you lean on each other more and you need each other more, and that balance might
Yeah.
come off and whatever, but
Mm.
it comes back again. Now I just feel like I have room. That's the
Yeah.
best way
You
to
have
describe it.
room
I have room, like
for
there's
yourself, but
space.
also for the relationship and for the
Yeah,
relationship. Yeah. That's
yeah.
beautiful. That's like you just described, I think, like the not perfect, but because we're human, but like the absolutely beautiful definition of awakened relationship.
Yeah.
And that's something that's very close to our heart. Awaken into love, like, yeah, fostering that idea of like relationship is not a prison, relationship is not neither a place where you put all like everything all at once, just like a place where two individuals, like, yeah, again, like weave a story together that's like new. It's like 1 + 1 equal three, kind of like
Yeah.
the three being like this like unique creation, like two individual people that are like that learn to
It's like a dance.
well, it's a dance. Yeah, I love it. It's a dance. Wow. Thank you. It's super inspiring, all of that. Thank you, Isla. I will just close with like four little questions. I will like, it's actually with Kiyomi, we've worked on defining what we think are the four values at Awaken into Love, the four pillars of our work, which is humanness, love, empowerment, and awakening. We think that's really the four pillars that are like have their subtle imprint in everything we do, everything we work on. So, what's being human for you?
I'd say it's so many things existing at once.
Beautiful. What is love?
For me now, love's definitely an action. It could be a feeling, but a lot of the time it could be as an action. And you can make it look however you want.
I love that. What is being empowered?
Being empowered like as a person, I think it's creating sort of like an unbreakable relationship with yourself. That no matter where you go and what comes up, you've got that there. I think empowerment's also then being able to share that with others, and it's like that ripple effect of raising that kind of consciousness up about these things.
Very powerful. That made me chill. What is awakening?
I'd say it's like bringing off layers of yourself that and tending to them, like tending to these different parts and layers and doing it slowly. Yeah, I would say it's like, because I think people see the word like awakening and think, oh, this big, massive spiritual awakening, and all truth will come out of it, and blah, blah, like it's yeah. For me, it's not that. It's been like slow chipping away, and little bits. I think we don't give ourselves as people credit for how much work we can do within ourselves. I think we kind of brush ourselves off that we are just one single way and that's it. I think there's a lot more depth to being human that I think anyone can uncover and anyone can find.
Wow. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you so much, Isla. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for having me.